Dit is de podcast van
Omroep Friesland.
Goeie, en welkom bij Noardewyn. Jullie hebben mij een bijzondere gast aan de tafel. Hij zou eerst mij een Friese band bij u deel komen in de televisiestudio. Helaas kon dat net trok in. Maar ik ben wel blij dat die jongens coach hier in het Omroep Friesland café. Want het is een man met een verhaal. Intussen krijg ik mij een redelijk Fries randje. Want hij speelt je wel regelmatig. En hij is voor een kwarte tournee ik even oer naar uw land. Ik had toen Chris Jagger. How's life?
It is hartstikke warm in Friesland.
Okay. Oh, you did that very well. You like summer? You like high temperatures? Is that?
I've kind of lived through high temperatures and cold temperatures, and I'm kind of sort of used to it. I mean, when I was a younger, I did quite a lot of traveling, and I went to India when I was 20 years old, and we went overland, you know, to first I went to Greece, and then I went to Istanbul, then, through Turkey to Persia, to Iran, Afghanistan. And then I remember from Afghanistan's hot, but it's high up, it's 7,000 feet, whatever that is in meters, 2,000 meters, 2,500 meters, but it's kind of dry. And then you come down the Khyber Pass, where they fought all these battles, you know, the British and other people. Every turn you go, there's a hill fort, you know, where people got killed, and it's really ghastly. And then you come down to the plains of India. I'd never been there before. And it's before the monsoon. You come down to Pakistan and you start feeling it's like going into a hot bath, you know, like a sauna. And you get further down and down and down, and then it's so hot and oppressive, and the pressure is, you think, oh my God, there can't be anything worse than this. And it was so hot that we stayed in a big old bungalow place, you know, very basic. The only way we could get cool is we'd sort of that huge bath. We filled up the bath with cold water, and then we'd sit under a sort of fan that we had to pull ourselves. You know, it was like unbearable. I mean, when the British were in India, they used to go to the hills in the summer because it was so hot. And I remember that was the hottest I'd really experienced. But mangoes were in season. These mangoes, we had these mango drinks. It was like amazing. So I've kind of used to that, and you know, obviously there are a lot of people. And the other thing about the Orient is, in India and that, like I live near Glastonbury. We just had the Glastonbury Festival. It's just like 200,000 people or something. There's a lot of people, and so you know, crowds of people. And I say, you going to the festival? No, there were so many people. I said, you've obviously never been to India, because in India, you just get used to millions of people showing up because there's some festival for Shiva or Krishna, or it's a full moon somewhere by the river, and there's just, you know, it's just so many people. But amazingly, there's not really a lot of trouble, you know, quite surprisingly. Because if there was trouble, you couldn't really, you know, how do you enforce stuff? I mean, there used to be in India, they used to go, the police they have these long sticks. They just wade into crowds, waving and smashing these sticks around.
Old school, you know,
get rid of
just banging.
Yeah, just banging, get out of the way.
You always liked to travel your whole life?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I was 17, I hitchhiked to Greece on my own. It took 10 days to get to Athens, and I had a couple of friends, and we said there were three of us. So we took, in the old days, you used to get the boat to Ostend, Oostende. That was the cheap boat to Oostende, and we said, well, we're all going to hitch separately because three guys you can't hitch. So we said, well, where should we meet in Athens? So we said, what about outside the Acropolis in the morning? This is before people had mobile phones and stuff. So I met one friend there. He showed up outside the Acropolis. So that was great. I think I spent £50. I was away for about 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, yeah.
So I kind of got the travel bug. It's a kind of amazing freedom, especially when you kind of go on your own and you can do what you want. you meet a lot of people, and you make friends, and then you say, okay, you're going that way, I'm going this way, bye.
Was the traveling enough at that age, or did you have some dreams and ambitions to get a musician or a writer or create clothes?
Well, you know,
you did a lot of jobs.
I didn't go to university, so I was supposed to go to university. So I felt guilty not going to university, as my father wanted me to go, and he helped me arrange it. And then I was in London, and we had the kind of, you know, flower power 60s, and it all got a little bit, it was just getting to the top of the thing. Everything was just so wonderful, and I just thought, it's not going to get any better. I'm just going to leave, you know, because I'd seen it all and all that. So there were certain things that happened after I left. Like, for instance, Brian Jones died. The Rolling Stones played at Hyde Park, and all that whole thing. I missed all of that, you know. So I didn't really, which I was quite sort of pleased about. I didn't really want to be part of that anymore.
Why not? Because your brother was having success. It's family, of course.
No. But that had all happened. You know, when I look back, you know, with the Rolling Stones, I think the most exciting time was when it was kind of first happening. You know, and it was
the first steps.
Yeah, the first steps, and it never really been done much before. And then once it became established and successful, and then it becomes a bit decadent, doesn't it? You know, things. You know, it's like the Beatles. You know, the Beatles were very exciting, but they didn't play. Then they didn't play any gigs. They just went in the studio. Anyway, I went to India. I just wanted to do my own thing. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do.
But just traveling, or did you do other things?
Well, yeah, because, you know, I was kind of still a student. Like, I had a book I used to write Sanskrit words in, and I was interested in Indian music and Indian culture and Indian religion, and I studied singing. I was there for a while. And we travelled around and saw a lot of things, and I met a lot of people. And the kind of hippie thing was quite interesting because there was people from all over the world. There was quite a lot of Americans I met, and a lot of Dutch people, Germans, Italians. But there was never any animosity between any of these people. We used to laugh a lot and all that.
One big happy family.
It wasn't a happy family, but we were kind of sharing a common thing, and we were had common interests, and there were certain philosophies that drew people out there. You know, that everyone had read Siddhartha, and you know, they knew about sort of interested in Krishna, and you know, certain sort of gurus who had been instrumental in years before, and people knew of obviously Ravi Shankar, and so that I was interested in the music. So I listened to a lot of music in India, and then after I've been there a while, I decided to stay in one place instead of traveling. So I went up to the mountains, hills above Delhi, and I learned some singing from the local singing teacher. And that's practically the only proper musical education I've ever had. And also taught me how to breathe. And I just learnt scales, you know, sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, sa ni da pa ma ga re sa, you know, and he showed me a little bit of the theory, Indian music, and that's been good for me, you know.
After that, I think you going back to England. You wrote songs for Vanessa Paradis and did things like that.
That was much later.
Much later.
I came back to England, and then my brother had a girlfriend called Marsha Hunt, a black lady. And she'd been in a show called Hair. And she said, she was typically American. okay, let's fix him up with something. So she fixed me up with a job being in hair in Tel Aviv. So my first sort of professional engagement was being in hair in Tel Aviv, and it was in Hebrew. So I sang the songs. I didn't do any dialogue. So we did, you know, like Let the Sun Shine In. It was Tnu la shamash, Tnu la shamash. And we danced and all that, and we had a lot of fun, and I was there for 6 months. So that was kind of my first time I was on stage, actually, you know.
As a professional singer, musician?
Yeah, I mean, it was good because Tel Aviv is a long way from London, so nobody could see me, you know, and say, you know, you're rubbish or whatever it was.
But when did you decide to become a musician? You released albums?
I guess I do. Well, no, when I was younger, I didn't really write or play anything, but I listened to a lot of music. And I say this to quite a lot of people, you know, when you meet people and they say, you know, I don't play music, but I listen to a lot. I say, yeah, that's great. That's really important, listening to a lot of music, you know. And I think over the years, just listening to a hell of a lot of music taught me. I mean, I didn't even think it. I think it just seeped into my kind of blood system. That, you know, when I was listening to like Muddy Waters when I was 13, you know, which I say to my friends at school, they were listening to, because in England the pop music scene was like English pop musicians like Cliff Richard and that would copy the American versions in general, and then they released them earlier. So, you know, before the American one was even out, they released it. So it was like the pop music was like that. I mean, and I'd be listening to Jimmy Reed or something, and they go, "Who? What do you want to listen to that for?" You know. Yeah. So I was sort of having an elder brother made me kind of a little bit more ahead of my time from that point of view.
Well, you both liked the blues, isn't it?
Yeah, we listened to a lot of music. We listened to, you know, Johnny Cash, you know, rock and roll, Elvis, Little Richard, Buddy Holly.
Jimi Hendrix.
Well, that was much later.
Much later, okay.
I mean, Jimmy didn't come over. But we listened to, you know, doo-wop. I mean, we had doo-wop records, you know, because that was quite big, you know, the vocal groups, the doo-wop. Incidentally, I mean, I love sort of Frank Zappa, because Frank Zappa loves doo-wop, didn't he? Ba-doo-ba-ba-ba. You know, that stuff. So we listened to a lot of stuff. And I think just over the years, you know, listening to that world music, you know, whatever music from different countries. I listened to, you know, first guy I heard, Clifton Chenier. I listened to that, Louisiana, and I just went, that's amazing. I love that. I never thought years later I'd actually be playing like kind of Zydeco kind of numbers with Charlie Hart and playing a washboard. But it got into my system. And you kind of, in order to play that stuff, you first got to understand what the hell it is. It's got a certain beat, it's got a certain rhythm, it's got a certain cadence, it's got a certain attitude. There's lots and lots of stuff. You can't just copy it. You've got to kind of somehow feel in onto it. You know, it's like reggae music. You know, bands say, oh, we're going to play a reggae number now. That's really hard. That's really hard because to get into that, you know, you've got to smoke a lot of pot and sit out in the sun and just kind of go, yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
And you've got to feel that, you know, when a reggae band comes on and that's all they do, you go, all right, that's what it is. I mean, I went to see an old reggae, it was Barrington Levy. We went to see Barrington Levy this year at Glastonbury Festival when I was watching him. And I was with friends and my wife and stuff. And they were saying, oh, yeah, should we go somewhere else now? And I said, you know, you just got to, like, let it into your kind of body, this music, you know. Even forget there's a band out there playing.
Just live it.
Just kind of be, you know, and after a while, your whole body starts going, moving like this kind of, and just relax and just let your legs kind of like, you know, you've got to get into it. It's not kind of like, it's not like the Rolling Stones coming on and playing, like all fired up like that. It's more subtle than that. And, you know, it's kind of attitude. And I tell you what, the big difference that I noticed this year about going to Glastonbury, because I saw a lot of bands that I wouldn't normally see because there's stuff happening everywhere. Of course, a lot of bands have got trip samples playing and rhythm tracks and stuff. And there's someone singing over it, and then there's a guy over there playing sax. And, you know, what's kind of happening here, you know, like, of course, being a musician, you analyze it. There's very few bands just playing without that now. This Barrington Levy, there was just a band playing like the old days. It's quite hard because obviously using all these modern tricks and computers and, you know, all that, hey, you know, as long as the technology sits there, you can't go wrong, too far wrong, can you? Because you're just turning on an Apple Mac. It's going to do the same thing every time, you know? And that was quite interesting watching that. And a lot of people are just so used to that now that that's the normal thing. Yeah. But I'm not very good at that. I mean, I'm kind of better at the old. I mean, I can't really. I mean, obviously, I've used technology stuff, but I'm kind of bet my stuff kind of goes backwards. You know, I'm more retro than the Rolling Stones. You know, my brother's always tries to keep up with the modern stuff. You know, he's like wants to be on the edge of the curve. You know, this is happening, that's happening. You know, I'm surprised he's not doing any rap.
Well, you can try. Did you listen to the new single of the Stones?
Yeah, I've listened to that. I haven't heard the rest of it. But my stuff is more like something, you know, this is like there's one track on this Mixing Up the Medicine, and it's like thinking, pity Frank Sinatra's not around. You know, he might have dug this song and, you know, like Frank might have sung it. That would have made my day.
Yeah, new album. Oh, well, let's talk about that. I heard you call the name Charlie Hart.
Yeah,
that's an old friend of you because he's on the new album. He wrote the songs with you.
I met him when I was 19. He was at Cambridge.
Okay,
so we've been friends for
life.
Yeah, life. Really. Yeah. We're still good friends. We haven't really had a falling out ever.
And you always wrote songs with him?
Yeah, he's great because he's such a good musician, and he's so good at help. We wrote these songs together and for BMG, bless them, and we worked quite hard on the arrangements. But Charlie's great because he plays lots of different music, and he plays piano, bass, violin, accordion, loads of stuff. So he's pretty much all you need. But how we work together is I come up with ideas and stuff, and he says, yeah, I like this one. That one, yeah, I don't know, maybe we'll come back to it later, you know. We don't trash each other's ideas, but we say, I don't know about that one. Yeah.
Let's give it some time.
Yeah, let's think about that. Yeah. But songs need quite a lot. They're like children. They need a lot of input. You've got to work on them. But you've got to decide what needs work and what doesn't need. You can't polish a turd, as they say. Does he have that expression in Friesland?
I think it's better in English.
So he had a couple of songs that are more or less his songs, and then a lot of them are mine. And then I used this poet who wrote in the 1840s called Thomas Beddoes, and I used some of his lyrics. I was kind of interested because he wrote before the kind of age of scientific age, and he was kind of a throwback even to an earlier age. So he kind of wrote about some of the stuff is like witchcraft. There's one track about it's almost like a witchcraft song. Wee Taylor.
Yeah,
it's about it's weird. It's really weird. And I was interested in different ideas coming, like I say, from a earlier period. And even that Anyone See My Heart, he wrote that. He was a kind of failed poet as well. I mean, he ended up committing suicide. He wandered around Europe. He was in Germany, he ended up in Switzerland. And he was gay. And that was like a terrible thing to be homosexual then. So he had to cover all that up. And there's a thing, isn't there? When you reinvent something from an earlier time, they get suddenly a lease of life. And I just thought, I like the idea of reinventing some of these ideas. And, like that, you just played that Anyone See My Heart, and we just put it to a kind of blue beat thing. We just thought because the thing about making music is how the hell do you stay relevant or original? That's really difficult. You can repeat the same thing in a different ways, but to sort of be in your own way original, it's a challenge. But and you don't know if it's going to work. Is it even going to work? You don't really know until you try it.
We're going to play the song. We Taylor. Chris Jagger zijn last album, Mixing Up the Medicine. En hier had er een gedichtbroek van Thomas Beddoes. En ik moet zeggen, een prachtig verhaaltje had hij hierin verwerken. Album is uit dus, hier had ik een boek uit. Geef ik nog een try, Talking to Myself. Is it always this group of people you make all the albums with, or is it about changing? Because Charlie Hart is
it's Charlie.
Is a made forever?
Yeah, Charlie played piano on it. He's not really a pianist, but he mostly played piano on that. But I got an old guy I had played with for quite back in the Atcher days called Dylan Howe, drummer, who's a lot younger than us. His father was quite a well-known guitar player called Steve Howe. He played in Yes. Remember them?
Yeah.
And then a very good double bass player called Ollie Blanche Flower. And then I got my friend John Porter, who's a great record producer, has been in the States for years and years, doing a lot of blues albums, Buddy Guy and loads of other people. And he came in on it to do in the studio, and he brought Neil Hubbard with him because he'd been doing this record with Brian Ferry. And I knew Neil Hubbard. He was actually on my second record. He's a guitar player. He was in a band called Kokomo years ago. He's done loads of stuff. He plays a bit of guitar. And Charlie, and then a couple of overdubs we did. Later on, John Etheridge played some guitar.
Before the recording, you exactly know what you want to do with the songs, or
no, not really.
Is there a lot of happening in the studio and during the recording process?
Yeah, and then we had a couple of very good sax players. And the funny thing is, you go in the studio and you kind of got an arrangement, but then you don't want to be too fixed about it, because then the guy says, "Oh, that B flat doesn't work with that thing," so you got to change it. You can't foresee everything. And the funny thing was, I got these two guys. It was called Nick Payne and Frank Mead, played saxophones, and they used to play with Bill Wyman's Rhythm Kids, Gary Moore. They're great horn players, and I kind of got the feeling from them. I mean, obviously, I paid them a session fee. It wasn't a huge session fee. I kind of got the feeling they wanted to say something, and that was, listen, we may be old guys and old musicians, but we ain't finished yet. we're going to do this. Have a listen to this. This is going to be good. And here we're going to show you younger guys we still can do it, you know. Because it's kind of the way you've got to be, you know. You don't want to just say, yeah, well, you know, I'm a bit old now. I can play a bit, you know. It's, you know, I'm not as good as I used to be, like blah, blah, blah. And he did a great arrangement. He played some flute on a couple of those tracks. And it's quite classy. You know, it's just like a record you could play someone in America who was on a stereo, and they say, that's a good record, man. You know, well produced, well recorded, well mixed, well mastered. That's a good sounding record. But of course, if you just listen to it on an iPhone and an MP3, you ain't gonna really see that, because there's no samples, or it's all just musicians. I mean, what I like is, you know, in fact, Dylan Howe, he was a guy I played with him. He played with Ian Dury when I was living in London, and he played with Wilco Johnson quite a lot, and he plays a lot of jazz. And I was talking to him many years ago as a young guy, and obviously a lot of sample music and stuff was coming up. And I said, well, what kind of stuff do you play, you know, on your own? He says, well, we've all got in our instruments, we've learnt our instruments, and we play them. And I went, oh, okay, great. You know, this guy comes along, he plays saxophones, and that's what he wants to do. You don't want to press buttons and do a lot of electronic stuff. He can't be bothered, you know, all that setup. And I just thought, well, quite a lot of young people, they just dig the whole thing, you know. And he studied drums really seriously, you know. It's his kind of life's work, you know. So. But it's quite tricky being a drummer, because what happens is now that someone says, we'll make an album, you come in and do some drums, and they just say, well, play these patterns. So they'll play these patterns for 2 or 3 hours, and other patterns. They say, okay, thank you. Then they just cut up all those patterns and use them in making their backing tracks. So you don't even know what you're playing for. There's no connection. There's not really any song. There's not a lot of enjoyment. You get a fee, but it's a basic fee because it's a short session.
It's business. It's cold.
It's kind of boring, you know. And the other guy I had with me, I said to him, a young guy, and I said, well, could you do this song all on your computer like that? And he said, yeah. He said, I could do it. It would take me about a week, and it's really boring. Why don't we just go and play it?
Yeah, just do it, yeah.
It's much more fun.
Did you have a lot of fun to record and produce this album?
Yeah, and me and Charlie worked quite a lot on the arrangements. I think arrangements are quite important. When you listen to a lot of stuff that you really enjoy, you're listening to good arrangements. You don't even know it. But of course, nowadays you can just chop up arrangements and change them a lot on, you know, with all these, you know, what are they called, you know, paste and everything. And once you're on a grid, you can do anything you want. I mean, that's why people kind of like live music, because it goes wrong and stuff.
Yeah, but it's real life, you know.
Things go wrong and you say, oh, sorry, I fucked up there.
Yeah.
Like they say in jazz, there's not such a thing as a mistake. It's what you do afterwards.
In the booklet is also a photo of your brother Mick. Is he appearing on this album too?
He sings only on that one. But to answer your first question, so we did this before we had the pandemic. It was in the autumn, and then the lockdown came late in the year, November or something like that. It was just before the lockdown, so we were all in the studio, and then and then we did the horn section. No, it came in the spring. That's right. We did the horn section in March, and then April or something we had this lockdown, and then I'd done all the record apart from the vocals, because I'd done all my guide vocals and that, but I had to do, you know, I like to be in the room with everyone singing. So I'm kind of in the middle of it, but you can't use those vocals because, you know, it's too difficult. So I had to go sing my vocals. So I did all the harmonies, everything myself, which was great fun. and did the low ones with John Porter. But then I wanted someone to sing on that, Anyone See My Heart. So I contacted my brother and I said, I want you to do, can you sing on this? You know, I sent him the track and he was in France. He said, yeah, but it's a lockdown and I can't work studio. He doesn't. I mean, I'm pretty much the same. He didn't know how to work the studio. He does some things, but he couldn't do the whole thing. So he said, I had to wait. Then he got bored of being in France and he went to Italy and he rented somewhere in Italy. And then he said, okay, well, I've got someone coming over now so I can do this track for you. I said, okay, great. And then he sent me the vocals back and I said, yeah, but it's not really right. Can you do it again? Because I want more of this and something else and like that. So he did it again. And I think he did, you know, he's good at doing that stuff. I mean, I've worked a bit with him. And it's a bit of you know, I like him to sing a bit more because, you know, it's a bit just doing backing vocals. You know, he's not a backing vocal bloody singer. I mean, he did a good job on You're So Vain, but... You know, anyway, he does it in good spirit, and he enjoys, and he liked the track. I mean, to me, he wouldn't do it if he thought the track was crap.
Did you have all the time good contact with your brother?
Yeah, I have good contact.
You have so much different lives,
he's
you know?
He's so busy with all his stuff, and he's so many children, and if he's in the UK, he's in London. I don't live in London. I live in the middle of nowhere, you know, so I don't really see him terribly. I mean, you know, I just seen him on his birthday. We had a nice time. So, you know, I see him from time to time, and I send him, you know, I send him things, messages and stuff, being as funny as I can. So he has to answer them, or a poem or something that he has to, you know, because he's kind of busy and... You know, but I like, you know, it's like that. Well, there's a track on this record called "Hey Brother," and it was just I was sitting in my barn. I got a piano there, and I started playing this song, saying, "Hey man, and you got a bit of time? You know, what about me? You know, I'm sitting here, and so hey brother, you got a bit of time, mate? You know," and I wasn't thinking that was some fantastic song, but then Charlie heard it and he said, yeah, that's good. He said, we're putting that on there. We're going to do that. And he said it's like a singer-songwriter thing. You know, it's like John Lennon doing Imagine. It's very basic piano playing. But it, you know, people sort of relate to it because a lot of people have got brothers, sisters, whatever, and you have to work on relationships. If you don't work on them, if you just don't speak to someone, what's your relationship there? You know, non-existent. So, yeah. So, yeah, and I played that. He said, "Oh, who's that about?" I said, "Yeah, okay." So I think he got the message.
Hey, brother. Yeah, yeah. Do you like the new single of your brother, Rolling Stones?
It's good, isn't it? It's quite loud.
Yeah, and it's a typical Rolling Stones song, isn't it?
Typical Rolling Stones song.
Yeah.
But that's their bed and they got to lie on it.
Yeah. Is it also your taste, or you're making for yourself more the blues music?
In the 90s, when the last record I made was at that point was in the 1970s. I made 2 albums, and then I kind of quit music and I went into acting. I came over here to Holland. I was in a play that we toured in Holland. It was a kind of political play, a 2-hander. And then I did play some music, but I never made a record. So then in the 90s, 94 or something, I had the chance to make a CD. CDs suddenly came a new thing. So when CDs came in, people were like, hey, this is John Lee Hooker on a CD. Hey, it's great, isn't it? You know, people started rediscovering old music because it all got reissued, and they got interested in. Yeah,
and sometimes they remaster it, so sound is better.
A lot of people started their taste kind of, you know, widened. So I got a chance to make a record. So I was kind of bored with this guitar 4/4, jang, 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 booga, 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 jagger, 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 you know, all that stuff. I thought, oh, fuck, you know. I've lived through that one. And so I kind of got interested in kind of Cajun music and a little bit more. I'd always liked country and a little bit more world music, you know.
Yeah, and later you made an acoustic CD also.
Yeah, so I like a bit of jazz and then a little bit of swing, and my taste was kind of different. So I kind of got bored with that heavy guitar music, and you know, particularly for me, that's too much an association with the Rolling Stones, you know, 'cause that's what they do. So I want to do something
on your own,
different,
like Chris Jagger, not like Mick Jagger.
What I do.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's worked out quite well. I mean, I've been touring around Europe quite a lot with a trio and a 4-piece band, and you know that music is it's got quite a wide appeal because I was listening to a band at Glastonbury Festival, or it might have been Chrissie Hynde, and I like Chrissie Hynde and that, but it just was so, I don't know, it's so old-fashioned. It was too stuck in the kind of rhythm like that, whereas I'm more, you know, like that Anyone Seen My Heart. It's a little blue beat thing, like, okay, we've gone back that way. But I mean, even bands like The Police, you know, Sting, he kind of got interested, didn't he? Doing a little bit of this and mixing it up. He wasn't just straight rock and roll stuff. You know, it's people like that. And I think that's worked out okay for me because people go, oh yeah, Cajun music, that's like, you know, you playing, people just, they will get up and dance. I mean, it's quite a long way from techno.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So if you go to France and they love techno in France, and you start playing a fast fiddle tune, they go, huh?
What is this, man?
What the hell is this?
This is the album. It's on internet, Spotify. You can buy it. Now, a small talk about your book.
One more last thing on that. You know, Bob Dylan's coming out with a new book in October. Do you know what it's called?
No.
Mixing Up the Medicine.
Is it?
I stole the title from him, and now he's stolen it back to him from me.
You're a fan of him, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I came up with that title very last minute, Mixing Up the Medicine, and I didn't even think it was a line in a Bob Dylan.
But isn't it also part of a song of him, of a lyric?
Subterranean Homesick Blues.
Yeah, that's the one.
Johnny's in the basement mixing up the medicine. I'm on the pavement thinking about the government. That was Subterranean Homesick
And did you
Blues.
steal it from that song? Or
Not consciously.
Oh, no. Okay.
I just thought, Mixing Up the Medicine, that's good.
Yeah.
And then someone said, that's a Bob Dylan line. I said, oh, yeah, is it? Okay, whatever.
Okay, whatever.
He may have stolen it from someone else. That's my theory.
Okay. Oh, it's a nice album. Very nice.
We all steal stuff off someone else. I wonder if he saw my album called Mixing Up the Medicine. You never know. I met him once or twice.
Okay.
He was kind of pretty bland. He kind of didn't say nothing.
Yeah.
He's very kind of like, you know, who gives a toss? Who the hell are you? I met in the studio with the band, and I was hanging out outside of LA in Zuma Beach, and it was in the 70s, early 70s, and Ronnie Wood called me up, and he said, I'm with Eric Clapton, and we're recording an album. Do you want to come out? So I said, yeah, okay. And it was like a kind of 2.5 hour, you know, like I don't know if you know Los Angeles, but someone says, come over. They don't say it's a 2-hour drive to the other side of Los Angeles, you know. So I drove out there, and it was the studio that belonged to the band. So Eric was there with his band, and there was no producer. So I sat in the studio. There was an engineer. So they were doing this album, No Reason to Cry, it was. So they do a track, and they play it, and they go, yeah, I quite like that take, yeah. And I was sitting there in the studio, so I pressed the button and say, yeah, I think that last take was the better one. Silence. And then who the fuck are you then? You know, like, who fucking asked you? So, like that kind of English sarcastic thing. You don't really know if people are being nasty to you or that they're just, that's kind of, it was all that Monty Python time when everyone was trying to be funny and like, you know.
Sharp and
all that
words,
stuff.
yeah.
But I thought, well, you shit, I got a pair of ears, you know, you asked there. So anyway. That may not have been the first day. Anyway, the next, so I went back. It was like I got home at 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was, went to sleep. I was a bit tired out, you know. Then the next day, I got another call from Ronnie. Are you coming down the studio? And I said, oh, no, I don't think so, you know. And he said, well, Eric wants you to come. So I went, oh, okay, well, Eric wants me. God wants me there.
Yeah, then you go.
God wants me.
Then you absolutely
so
go.
I went down there. Finally, they got a producer in from Criterion Studios, a kind of loud American guy who went, oh, you know, like that, you know, he knew everything about everything. But anyway, the band were there, so I met all the guys in the band who are my kind of idols, and Bob Dylan came in. He came in with a song on Eric's birthday, and the first line of it was, you speak to me in sign language while I'm eating a sandwich in a small cafe. And he kind of, it's his sort of birthday present to Eric, and they recorded that, and Van Morrison was there too, and they had a jam. And I tell you, the guitar players, there was Jesse Ed Davis, who, I don't know if you know who he was an American Indian guitar player, great, he had a band called, I can't remember. Then there was Robbie Robertson, Eric, Ronnie Wood, and George Terry. It was Eric's guitar player, very good. There's 5 amazingly good guitar players.
That's amazing.
I was sitting around with the rest of the band.
Sounds like paradise.
Garth Hudson, guy Lee Von Helm, they were all there. So, you know, I've always loved their music. And, you know, one of the things when you get to my age, and I'm 75 now, is, you know, some of these guys that you liked and stuff, and they kind of, I always feel that they sort of pass something on to you. You know, you're there, you're witnessing it. You know, why are you there? You don't even know, you know, you were asked to be there, but, you know, what's your function there? But kind of, I'm sort of part of that kind of legacy. Yeah. And I feel, you know, like last night we had a little rehearsal with the guys, and I said, well, you know, Robbie Robertson just died. So are we going to do, well, let's do The Wait or something. Yeah. And he said, yeah, everyone loves that. Yeah. And we do that. So, you know, if we don't do it, the band are not around to do it. So, you know, we're passing it on. You know, they passed it on to me. I saw them play and I met the guys. Yeah. You know, I kind of knew what made them tick a little bit, you know. And it's a little bit like that with some of those blues guys. And, you know, the Rolling Stones were quite lucky because they had it passed on to them. You know, they loved that blues music. They went out to America. They went to Chicago, went to Chess Studios. And those guys, who the hell are these white English guys? Because it was like South Chicago. They call it the Loop. Only black guys went there. You didn't go there if you were white. So they went into this studio, and they were like, well, these white guys come into the studio, obviously, because they love the music. And so they went, yeah, okay, all right. And so they helped the Rolling Stones a lot. They appreciated their fact that they come there. And they didn't see them as ripping them off. Some may have done. So I think they kind of went, yeah, they've got on great. Oh, yeah, do it like this. And there was a camaraderie. And I think the reason is because they don't want it to die. They want it to be passed on.
Of course, yeah.
And whether you're black or white, it don't matter. Yeah. Because it's their music, they invented it, and they feel it. And obviously it applied to them. But they're passing on a kind of special kind of, it's African. And that music come from Africa, really. And so it's very, you know, it goes back a long way. And so I think that's, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? The blues, you know, I mean, I was listening to the blues when I was a kid and all that. But now you can go to Japan or Korea or wherever. Oh, the blues band's playing down the road. Yeah. Oh, what are you going to do? What are you doing further on down the road? Okay, in what key? They got it you know, they listen to it, they appreciate it, and it's simple music, but it's got a lot of nuances. It's got little things. We were talking about this last night. It's like what Chuck Berry said to Keith Richards in that film. You almost got it.
Almost got it. Your book, what's the story you're telling in this book? Is it the whole life story, biography?
Yeah.
What's the important thing to tell in your book?
I don't know. But I've been a writer a bit, so I kind of started trying to write.
You were a journalist
30 years ago, yeah. But, you know, it's quite different writing journalist stuff to writing a book. It's a lot bigger, a lot more work. Yeah, because I tell you one thing was I read a book a guy had written about, he took 3 writers, Irish writers, Oscar Wilde, William Butler Yeats, W.B. Yeats, the poet, and someone else. And he wrote about their fathers. And it was a quite interesting book about Oscar Wilde's father was this famous surgeon, eye surgeon. Yeats's father was a painter. Who was the third person? James Joyce, the writer James Joyce. It was about James. Of course, their fathers were terribly influential in their life because they were quite important people. And I was writing this. I mean, I write about my parents. And I write about my father. I'm going, well, I'm writing about my father. This story needs to be told. You know, Mick Jagger didn't just come out of nothing. You know, he wasn't just like an alien that arrived from Mars. You know, my father was a really important person in his life, obviously. You know, he had disagreements and all that, and he was quite a different person. But so, you know, put him on the map. So I started writing the stuff. My mother was like this, my father was like this, my uncle was like this, and this is kind of how stuff was in those days. And it's a kind of historical document up to a point, you know.
How was it writing? Did you?
A lot of work.
Yeah, that is. And kill your darlings, isn't it, or not?
What I had to do is not play gigs for a while.
Okay.
I did play a few gigs, but you couldn't kind of go out and play gigs Thursday, Friday, Saturday, come back, then the next week, oh, God, I'm feeling really tired, and then go off and play another gig. You know, I had to get up in the morning, do a little routine, and then go and start writing. And I only wrote when I felt good and I felt positive about the whole thing. If I felt really rubbish, I wanted it to be enjoyable. But it's quite hard. I think, you know, if you really want to be a writer, you've got to dedicate yourself to writing. It's
all or nothing.
And you get, you know, a lot of the writers you see, their big novel is their 5th novel or something. You know, by that time they've kind of got it. I mean, there's occasional people, their first novel hits it. Yeah. But I think, you know, you need to be dedicated, and the more you write, the better you become. But there's lots of stories in there, like yarns, and there's lots of stuff about music. There's stuff about me being in theatre.
Book Talking to Myself is uit.
And there's a song on the record called Talking to Myself,
okay,
which is a little bit about writing the book, which I think is the first time anyone's had a book and a record and had a track, the title of the book, as a track on their record.
We're going to play it. One question. You now play for a small tour here in Netherlands with a Frisian band.
Yeah.
How is it playing with them?
Well,
do you like it?
It's a bit difficult to say because Dowie is sitting here listening, so I have to be very polite. I'm playing a bit solo and reading some from my book, which is nice, but I'm not really what I normally do. And then we're playing a few tunes together. They're very good musicians. They're all really good musicians.
You like playing with them? Yeah,
I mean, and especially it's very nice coming to Friesland and coming to the north. And this is the home territory of Dowie. This is where he feels comfortable. He never goes to Amsterdam. And he also, he rather likes non-alcoholic beer, which I'm a bit worried about.
What are your plans now? You're now in Holland for a couple of days.
No, I'm here for another week.
Another week, but then you go back and then
I'm
you go on tour, or
he's got a date.
You want to play with your mates?
I've got some dates in Switzerland at the end of September. And a couple in Germany, and I don't know, finishing up the year. I mean, look, I'm quite old now, so my main thing, I think, is trying to keep fit and healthy.
Okay.
Because
drinking a lot of tea.
Well, yeah.
Alcohol-free beer.
No, I don't. I've never. I once I bought an alcohol-free beer by mistake, and I started to drink it, and it was absolutely horrible.
You're still tasting it.
So I don't. I've got an alcohol. You know, when they make alcohol-free beer, they make the beer with alcohol in, and then they have to take the alcohol out.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah. There are different ways to make it, produce it. Yeah, I read an article about it. Okay, very nice to have you here.
Yeah, and
thank
very
you.
Nice to be here.
I hope to see you playing once here in the studio. Want de volgende keer. See you next time.
Alsjeblieft.
Alsjeblieft. Thank you.
Hey brother, have you got a little minute to spare?